for my supper. I wish for a daughter. By dropping a few bombs, they're stopping the slaughter. So kill me with pleasure and drown me in laughter and make me a martyr of love and devotion. I know.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me properly. Let me know if you can't. Send me a message in the chat. And hopefully everyone can hear me. Thank you, Lorraine, for that note. So I'll proceed. Welcome again to our session on self-esteem and assertiveness, which is one of our series of webinars organized by Working Town on mental health at the workplace. This is all a run-up to our upcoming conference, which we'll organize in December. We have an interesting program for you today, and once again, I thank you all for joining. So basically, I want to give a quick introduction on Working Town. Working Town is a company focused on raising awareness on issues of social importance with amongst businesses. Mental wellness is one of these issues. The fact that you are present at this webinar, I think you all agree that this is the case. I'm going to share my screen again now to take you through a couple of slides before I introduce our keynote speaker. Okay, first of all, I want to start by thanking our partners and supporters who have been with us throughout this series of webinars and will be still with us on the December conference, the Richmond Foundation, the CEO today, the Chamber of Commerce, the General Workers Union and the North Employees Association, Reconnect, Sanya Ecosta, Health Delivery. There are links on the website. So, I'm going to pause here. I think self-esteem is a very important topic. It's one which I myself have struggled with probably through most of my adult life. And I think one of the things that we try to promote when talking about encourage and only can music. Okay. The music stopped now. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Okay, can you hear me though? Sorry, I left the music on in the background. I apologize for that. Okay, well, anyway, returning to the important topic of today, self-esteem and assertiveness, I think are very common issues that people deal with in a day-to-day basis. I know that it's something that I've dealt with throughout my adult life. And one of the things we try to do is also encourage people to speak up and about their issues. It's something, thank you, Cheryl, for your comment about the song, but unfortunately it was not allowing people to hear me. Not that hearing me is better than the song, I understand. But so we will, again, it's something I think talking about mental health issues or mental wellness issues is very difficult. I find it difficult myself. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my own issues with self-esteem. But even in the interest of time, and because our keynote speaker is also much more interesting than me, I will invite Alessandra to join us right now. So Alessandra, I'm going to promote you to speaker. So Please welcome Alessandra. She should be joining us in a second. Hello, Alessandra.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. And thank you, Mark, for your intro. And the song was really nice in that moment.
Yes, it's, for anyone who's interested, that was a song by the Flying Alligators, a Maltese, one of my favorite Maltese bands. So I will just switch to the next slide to give you an idea of what the program is going to be like. So my introduction is done. Alessandra will now give us a keynote presentation on self-esteem and assertiveness. After that, we will be joined by Stefania, who is the CEO of the Richmond Foundation. So she can tell us a little bit about what the Richmond Foundation does to help companies with their employees' mental health. And after that, we will be joined by 5 other speakers to have a panel discussion on the topic, which I will moderate. And I encourage you during that panel discussion, and even before that, if you want to send questions through the chat or through the Q&A, and I will try to moderate them as best I can. So without further ado, this is Alessandra Patti. She is a mental well-being strategist and mental health first aider. And I will allow her now to share her screen so she can take us through her presentation. Thank you, Alessandra.
Thank you for the introduction, Mark. So I'm going to now share my screen. I hope that everything works and that you can see it. I see everyone is very active in the chat, so I hope you can see the screen now. All right, so nice meeting you all. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm so glad that we're tackling this topic, and thank you, Mark, for organizing it. So as Mark was saying, my name is Alessandra. I'm Italian. I live in Zurich. I'm the founder of Find Your Way Coaching, and I'm a mental wellbeing strategist. Actually, what we tackle today, it's really the source of my passion and my mission and work, because I work at the intersection of assertive communication and mental well-being. So actually, today's topics are of extreme importance, both in the realm of communication training, but also in the realm of mental well-being. That's what we are here for, of course. And the angle from which I'm tackling the topic is, of course, to consider self-esteem and self-assertiveness as 2 elements absolutely depending on each other. And especially to make you all understand how assertive communication would bring better mental well-being at the workplace. So I'm going to be very practical. We're going to interact a little bit through a couple of polls. And I'm very, very curious and really looking forward to see what is triggered from these talks. All right, so what is self-esteem? I would like to show you various definitions of self-esteem that I really like and find valuable, since sometimes I've actually come across the fact that it seems hard to define what self-esteem is. But maybe that's because there is just not one definition to it. Actually, one of the pioneers of self-esteem, Nathaniel Branden, I don't know if you know him, I will be mentioning a few times so you can actually then write down the name and the books I'm referring to. He said something very beautiful. He said, self-esteem is the immune system to consciousness. So imagine how a healthy immune system doesn't guarantee that you'll never become sick, right? But your immune system reduces the susceptibility to sickness. So self-esteem would be our kind of immune system to consciousness, meaning it would also protect us by creating boundary for us, by actually promoting self-love and the conscious outlook on life. That's what he means. Another definition that he gives is that self-esteem is the judgment that we are appropriate to life. Yes, that we have a place in this world. Isn't it beautiful how we know that we are appropriate to life just because of the fact that we exist, even though we know that it's not always that simple, because self-esteem might have increases and decreases over time at any stage of our life. And he also said that self-esteem is the belief or our own right to exist. It's also the opinion about ourselves and our personal worth too. So there is a lot here to unpack. And I I love the three of those categories, of those definitions. So I invite you to really take for you the definition that you want, and there are just so many more. But today it's not only about self-esteem, we also talk about self-assertiveness. So there is a lot of literature, also very scientific literature and studies out there presenting findings of how the topics of today, self-esteem and assertiveness, can be used in the realm of prevention, so to speak, to prevent people's mental struggle and promote better communication, better stress management, and all in all, happiness at the workplace, right? However, again, one of the literature that most speaks to me is the same of the one of Nathaniel Branden, a book particularly dear to me, which is called The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. So by defining what self-assertiveness is, he said that self-assertiveness is one of the pillars of self-esteem. So a support system. Being assertive, which we define in a minute, is like a pillar for our own worth. But for me, assertiveness is also the outward expression of self-esteem, meaning authentic communication, decisive communication, clear communication. Again, which is not something so easy to do. So here is definition from the book, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. And I hope you love it as much as I do. So self-esteem means honoring my wants, needs, and values, and seeking appropriate forms of their expression in reality. Self-assertion does not mean belligerence or inappropriate aggressiveness. It means the willingness to stand up for myself, to be who I am openly, to treat myself with this respect in all human encounters. He also says to practice self-assertiveness is to live authentically, to speak and act from my innermost convictions and feelings as a way of life and as a rule. So this definition has a lot in it. There's a lot to unpack. It goes really very deep. Here, Branden is telling us that assertiveness is not only a communication strategy that anyone can learn just by training. It is an attitude. It goes very deep because it implies an attitude of self-respect. It implies a personal growth that needs to be worked on every single day of our lives. And it's not just a simple strategy. It basically goes to the core of our ability to have compassion, place boundaries. So this means also say no from time to time, the ability to love ourselves, right? Which informs a lot of our mental well-being and life quality, right? It also demonstrates that assertiveness is not aggressiveness, because aggressiveness would imply my wanting to impose my wishes and needs on others. And therefore, also a lack of ability to communicate those needs properly, because if I have to recur to aggressiveness to be heard, that says a lot about my self-esteem and my self-worth, right? So please feel free to share in the chat how this definition makes you feel, and I would be just happy to reading you at some point. Then when there are questions, of course, I will be also there with the other wonderful panelists. So there is so much to unpack from this definition, and I hope that you can take the self-respect also a lot as a way of life from what self-assertiveness means. And right now I would like to take a moment and launch a poll to see actually how many of you believe or have believed in the past that in order to be happy and appear confident at the workplace, we needed to be aggressive in our communication style. So the poll is up now. Thank you, Mark. So the question is there. You can answer yes or no, and then I would be very, very curious to share the results to see what's there. I'll give you a few seconds. I cannot see how many people are voting, so then Mark, you will have to support me on that when we share the results.
Yes, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
We have everyone who's voted. No, 79 people. We have 100 attendees. Mm-hmm. So far, 80 have voted.
All right, let's wait a few more seconds and then we can see the results. Thank you.
Okay, we have 89 who replied. It seems to have stalled, so I'm going to end the poll now.
Okay, and if you could share the results, I'm not sure we'll be able to see those. I hope so. I should be able, and to see where the majority actually would be. Wow, so we have a majority of no. Okay, so actually the belief is here that in order to appear confident, we don't have to recur to aggressive behavior. However, actually, we still have a 22% who has believed that in the past, and that's pretty common, right? It is very common to have believed that an assertive attitude means aggressive, when it's not at all. And I hope you can see this in the definition that we are seeing. So sometimes actually, in order to appear confident, we might have been misled to actually raise our tone of voice or put a body posture that is more aggressive, whereas actually, I personally believe that self-assertiveness would be the answer. So thank you for that. All right, so moving on in the presentation, and we're going to do another poll also in a few seconds. You might ask yourself at this point, so how self-assertiveness finds itself and the intersection with mental health? Why, if I have a healthy self-esteem and if I am more assertive, I can have better mental well-being? It is actually truly simple, because a big part of our general well-being consists actually in being able to communicate our needs and wants. I hope I've been able here to really make it clear for you by looking at this intersection. So a lot of our well-being depends on how we communicate, on our self-assertiveness. A lot of our well-being as an holistic well-being depends on what we filter, how we say yes to things we want, how to say no to things we don't want, boundaries. Isn't it just nicer and more comforting when we are able to express ourselves? When we are able to stop the fear of missing out and engage with the joy of missing out and avoid burning ourselves out just because we don't want to say a few no's or we fear the consequence. However, that's not that easy, right? To see, if you look at that intersection, it's not easy to do, right? To communicate, to set boundaries, to do self-care, to manage the challenges of life. And yet that would prevent a lot of mental struggles. But it's not that easy, because that implies many things. It implies good self-knowledge, the awareness for me to be able to fully communicate how I feel and what I need. It takes a high level of consciousness, right? It takes courage. It takes a high level of knowing myself, what I want, what I'm capable to do, which actually takes also self-esteem. Basically knowing my worth, having trust in my judgment, having a voice, knowing I have a voice. So assertive, authentic, and clear, innovative, and also fearless communication is the implication of this. Because real self-esteem really comes from within. It is really, again, the judgment that I'm appropriate to life, knowing I have a right to exist, and this is not an easy task. I don't think it's an easy task, especially at the workplace, partially because it can happen that sometimes people do not feel heard or seen, or we might have fear of being ourselves, or our own culture might have discouraged us from speaking up because of fear of consequences. Imagine also how we could be discouraged to talk about our own mental well-being, which actually is something that now is more and more encouraged during the pandemic and post-pandemic. Actually, it's something that now is open, and COVID just made it more obvious, but it was always there, right? How sometimes it's not easy to have those conversations assertively. So because it's just so tough sometimes to cultivate our self-esteem at the workplace, I have another question for you. So that's poll number 2, if you can pull it up, Mark. Do you feel it is easy to cultivate your own self-esteem at work? All right, so yes, no. And another option to also say that you would really like very much to be supported in your environment, in your self-esteem. All right. How is it going?
So we have 76 people who've replied so far. Just give them a few more seconds.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, we're up to 85. It seems to have stopped, so I'm going to end the poll now.
All right. Thank you for sharing the result, Mark. Thanks a lot for your assistance. All right. So yes, I feel supported in cultivating my own self-esteem at 50%. 42% I very much like to be supported in my personal growth at the workplace, and 14% a no. So you see, there is a little bit of everything, which actually makes me think, you know, that we are moving forward with cultivating self-esteem at the workplace and self-assertiveness, but we might still continue to do a better job. Some of us might get discouraged sometimes because of our own belief on our worth to propose things at work until they're perfect. The workload and the needs of the workplace sometimes are hard to say no to. And sometimes if we don't protect ourselves and our boundaries, our mental health can suffer. So let's just think for a minute on how poor self-esteem might show up in communication. So that type of communication would certainly not be assertive. So when there is a decrease of our self-esteem, our communication suffers from it. People might belittle their ideas, even the expression of them. People might apologize before presenting an idea, or they might anticipate disagreement and feel very nervous, versus a person at work with a healthy self-esteem would believe in their ideas, be creative, and ready to move forward. Actually, studies show that individuals with low self-esteem can statistically suffer from more burnout, more anxiety, and there are risk of depression. Not to mention, again, the difficulty as well to talk about our own mental well-being at work. So all in all, my proposal here, my encouragement here in this webinar to organization and individuals, which is of course part of my current work, is the following. And what if we introduce self-esteem and self-assertiveness in a company's mental well-being strategy? Why not? And actually, it could be one of the most difficult places where introduce it. So why not introducing it there? And not only, we could go actually farther and cultivate it in the most formative years and offer self-esteem and self-assertiveness trainings in schools, universities, as onboarding for employees, as upskilling for everybody. And I think before there was this conviction that this type of skills are something that you should cultivate on your own, like a personal need, nothing to do with work. But they actually are an integral part of a person training set of skills and journey at the workplace. And if you think of that, if we do that in companies and organizations, we would have a double winner. We ensure better mental health and self-care, and we assure amazing communication. We would have a winner there, 100%. But I want to go farther in this idea and present you also with the why. Why would we do that? So I know I've said already, but I want to go even farther. So why would we do that? The world as it is right now, the new knowledge, new technology, competitiveness of global economy, we have so much more choices and decisions to make at a conscious level. Remember what Brandon said, self-esteem is a new system of consciousness. So we need a lot of self-esteem, a lot of decision-making power to be able to navigate those challenges. They require a lot from us. The ability to manage change requires self-esteem and self-assertiveness, and a good ability to recognize our capabilities and also communicate them and protect ourselves. Creativity, innovation, loyalty, results for customer, mental well-being at work, for me, are all the faces of the same coin. So self-assertiveness and self-esteem supporting culture. Actually, in the past, denying ourselves for the good of an organization was a value of the past. I believe that today we should not have self-denial at work, but we should be all part of a culture that promotes our capabilities, self-esteem and self-assertiveness for mental well-being. So from the why, I would like to show what and how. So the what. So how, if we were to do it in companies, how would that look like, right? So imagine a good place to start could be coaching sessions, right? Coaching group sessions on personal development. So we could start on personal growth. And this, I have seen a lot of requests, especially post-pandemic, when organizations really understood that they had to open up this space for employees to talk about anything, but also during the pandemic. Just now, it seems to be shifting towards mental struggle, towards remote work. There could be a focus on self-esteem, for example. And what would the more important question would be if we were to have a coaching focus group in companies on self-esteem? And it's something the organizations are requiring a lot. So my questions would be, how do you talk to yourself? Do you feel you are good enough? Do you take care of yourself? What's your self-care strategy? Do you know how much you really are, how you are enough? And do you take care of yourself by communicating your wishes and needs? So I think that these sessions sometimes in the past were called work-life balance, but actually a lot would depend on people's self-assertiveness too, because self-esteem is a journey. Sometimes a company cannot be sure how high the self-esteem of a person could be, right? But what if we put those tools available for employees to cultivate their self-esteem? And I do believe that self-care is one of the best ways to boost self-esteem as well. This is why one of the questions would be, are you taking care of yourselves? Apart from group coaching and focus groups on self-esteem, I would go for communication trainings on assertiveness and self-esteem. Actually, I've been required a lot of assertive trainings lately because of burnout prevention. Why? Because actually, the set of skills that you learn during an assertive communication is also how to communicate, put boundaries, but also how to take care of yourself. And I get this question, for example, what if we would do an upskilling, but also an onboarding? I think onboarding would be fantastic, right? All those trainings that we would go through during the onboarding phase, what if we would have a burnout prevention compulsory training? Or conversation on mental well-being for leaders, but for everyone else too. Probably for leaders as well, because they might initiate the conversation and the mental well-being strategy, right? To have a long-term strategy. And last but not least, in the cycle of mental well-being, why don't we have mental health first aiders or ambassadors for mental health at the company, as well as counseling services or access to counseling services? This is very important because a work on self-esteem, when we are going deeper, we could also tap into traumatic event, into actually situations and feelings in which people would need mental health support too. But all this, it just goes together. And I believe also personally that both psychotherapy, counseling, and coaching, they stimulate and encourage the needs to develop new skills in an individual and expand our sense of possibilities. So this model together, I think it's a winning model. And as well, I personally believe that the education industry should look at that too and introduce this type of trainings in their curriculum on a deeper level. So again, focus groups, communication assertiveness trainings, and counseling available, first aider ambassadors. Because Nathaniel Branden, he knew that too. He said, I'm quoting, "The successful organization of the future will be an organization geared to self-esteem, an organization whose people operate at a high level of consciousness, self-assertiveness, and respect of the assertiveness of others, and purposefulness will be an organization of extraordinary, empowered human beings." I believe in that too. And on this very note, because we're talking about self-esteem and self-assertiveness, I want to propose a call to action to you, which is the following question. If you, as of today, would use just 10% more self-assertiveness into your everyday life, what would change? So I give you a minute maybe to reflect on that. Feel free to answer in the chat, or you can just write down that thought if you have a journal. If you would use just 10% more self-assertiveness, what would change? Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Alessandra. Some very insightful comments there and interesting to ponder on. I definitely will be taking some time to think about the last question myself. And as I said in the chat, I invite anyone who has any questions for Alessandra to post them in the chat, and Alessandra will rejoin us later when it comes to the panel, and we will ask them to her there. Thank you so much, Alessandra. And welcome,
Thank you.
Stefania. Welcome, Stefania.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the invitation to be on this seminar. I'll now be...
Stefania is the CEO of the Richmond Foundation, and I'll leave it into her capable hands. She'll be sharing her screen to deliver her presentation on the work of the Richmond Foundation.
Okay, I trust that you can see the screen by now.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. I'll be giving a brief overview of what Richmond can do to support organizations as they try to support their employees' well-being. As Alessandra has so clearly explained, the pandemic has had a silver lining, and it has showed us that all of us are susceptible to mental health issues. And our experience is that so many organizations are now asking, what can we do for our employees in order to support them better? 2.6 million is the cost of poor mental health to the Maltese economy in 2019. This is calculated on the basis of the cost in the UK as per Deloitte 2020. So when we consider such a huge cost, I think there isn't much space to ponder whether we should actually be putting mental health at the forefront. We as employers, we as businesses, had that amount been a cost in some other resource, we would definitely be scrambling to address it. So, employees' mental health. One of the important aspects is, do we know how our employees are faring? Do we know the well-being status of our organization? And Richmond recommends that as a very good place to start. Running a research to measure the employees' well-being will give a snapshot or a regular update, maybe an annual update of how your employees are faring. What are they experiencing? Possibly what are they experiencing without talking about it, because we know that many people are still very cautious. If we know what we're up against, if we know what we're trying to deal with, is it anxiety? Is it, there might be situations of harassment, there might be situations of bullying, there might be so many situations, there might be issues in a particular department because of a dynamic issue. Do we know what's going on? If we really need to want to support our employees, we need to know what's going on. Richmond runs a survey in the Healthy Minds Know. So overall, our package is called Healthy Minds Work, and it comprises 4 sections. The first one is this research to enable companies to understand. A link is sent to every employee the employer can follow through a dashboard, and there are comparisons with companies in the same sector. The employer can see how many people have replied and the real life results. There are benchmarks available with companies in the same sector so that the organization knows how they're faring. Once we have this information, then what? Richmond can analyze it and, on the basis of the presenting issues, recommend a way forward on the basis of the services that we offer. This is the consult component. We analyze the raw data and we plan together with the employer how to address the issues that have presented themselves through the research. One of the main recommendations is to introduce a mental health policy. How can an employee be assertive in an environment which may be not so conducive to talking about mental health issues? If we start with a mental health policy, that is giving a very strong message. This is a safe space where you can talk, discuss your mental health issues. And that is one very big step in the right direction. That is something which we facilitate with the employer to help them to introduce the mental health policy. On the basis, as part of our consult service, we also support organizations when they have crisis. We know that as time passes, the crises at the place of work are increasing. Sometimes you have somebody who has had a meltdown, sometimes you have somebody who doesn't report for work and you don't know what's happening with them. Sometimes you have people who are actually having suicidal thoughts at the workplace. And that is where Richmond is just one phone call away. Through our 1770 helpline, we get in touch, HR managers get in touch with us, and we help them to work through the crisis, also bringing other stakeholders on board in real time, so that the crisis is addressed in as smooth and as dignified and respectful a manner for all involved, both the employee and the HR person who is trying to deal with it. Part of our recommendations are obviously through training. You can do a lot to improve people's mental health by raising awareness, providing information, and also skills. We offer a whole range of training. Part of it is bespoke, so we design the training depending on the requirements of the organization. We also have a wide training portfolio which is already available, and a significant part of it was developed as a result of the pandemic and the new aspects which this has presented. Working from home and the issues which employees face, the issues which managers face trying to manage people working from home. And what about as we try to come back to the office? How have things changed? How are we going to manage the new reality? Do people want to come back? Do we really need them to come back? So these are all issues, like most change, which are very stressful. And we try and make our contribution in helping everybody navigate all this change. Mental health first aid is a very popular training course, which is licensed to us from Mental Health First Aid International based in Australia. We've had very good feedback about it, trained about 4,000 people already. And this course provides information about the main mental health situations, crisis, and a strategy of how we should approach people whom we believe have a mental health issue and how we can support them. Finally, Healthy Minds Talk. This is a psychological service. It is completely confidential, which is very important because that is part of the package which gives people the trust in the service, the confidence to attend. We are now focusing on an intake session, emotional support, and therapy. The intake session assesses risk. Is there risk of harm? How urgent is this? We start providing emotional support immediately, and on the basis of whether therapy is indicated, we also provide therapy. Meanwhile, our 1770 free phone is available 24/7, and our recently launched Oli Chat is also a professional service online, which provides information, guidance, and also crisis intervention. We have actually facilitated admission to hospital when it was indicated, both through our 1770 and through Oli Chat. That was a very brief overview, trying to meet my 8-minute time frame. These are our contact details, and should anybody want to discuss a situation, a crisis, ways of supporting their employees, you're all very welcome to get in touch with us, and we'll do our very best to support you. Thank you.
Stefania, thank you so much for that. I think everyone admires the work the Richmond Foundation does. We were saying before joining that the Richmond Foundation have been doing this since the early 90s, a time when all of these issues were taboo. So the Richmond Foundation really is a trailblazer when it comes to these issues in Malta, and we thank you and the organization very much. So in the meantime, we have been joined by our panelists. I think everyone is here. I'm just not seeing Roslyn. Have I managed to add Roslyn? Let me try again. I'm not seeing her. Oh, there she is. Okay, fantastic. So our panel is here complete. If you want to put on your cameras, you're welcome to do so. And so hello, everyone. So I'm going to be posting the bios of the panelists in the chats to avoid, taking up a lot of time reading them, which you can do yourselves. But there's a slide up showing who the panelists are. Of course, we saw Alessandra before. So we have a really great panel of professional people who deal with mental health issues in their own way. And I look forward to the discussion that we're going to have. And of course, I invite anyone who has any questions during the panel to post it either in the Q&A or in the chat, and I will try my best to relay these questions to the speakers. One thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning, the session is being recorded. I should have warned everyone about that at the beginning. However, the participants are not being filmed, or their names will not show up on the recording, because this is a webinar format. We will be posting the recording on YouTube for those of you who either can't stay for the whole session, or a number of you who registered. We had nearly 200 people who registered. A number of them obviously will make it, so they'll be able, hopefully, to watch the recording. So, welcome everybody to our panel. Thank you so much for your time and for the work that you do every day in addressing issues of mental wellness. And first of all, I'm going to do a very quick round robin. Please be conscious of time. We aim to finish at 4:15, so we aim to finish on time, so we have about half an hour. I have two questions which I'd like you to take turns to answer. Maybe we can start from Patrick Rosalind and Rachel and Desiree will give those who haven't spoken yet. So we're talking about the work that you do to help other people who have mental health issues. But how do mental wellness professionals deal with their own issues, if any, of self-esteem? Because you're human like everyone else, so you have your own issues. And how do you deal with them? Patrick, I'll let you start.
That's a very important question, I think. While betraying my age, I've been practicing as a warranted psychologist for 23 years now. And from day one, once a month, I always attend a 3-hour supervision session that gives me support. I can be vulnerable, I can bring my own issues to it. I can look at how people are affecting me, and it's a small group. We've been together for all these years, and basically that's my source of sanity. So so that's how I do it.
Mark, Yasmin is trying to join as well. I don't know if you can maybe put her on as a panelist.
I thought I did. I'm sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to add Yasmin as well. But go ahead in the meantime, Rose. Maybe you can take your turn and let us know if you do anything to take care of your own mental wellness.
Yes, I do. I actually go to Yasmin, who's actually joining us. So I'm very lucky. I do believe, even though, you know, sometimes people see, you know, they tend to see lawyers strong, you know, we're always sticking up for other people. But in reality, even we are vulnerable as professionals, and I need someone to fill up my tank, so to speak. So I do go to therapy, like I go and see Yasmin, and I do other things, for example, meditation, you know, in the evening I try to do a little bit of meditation. Yasmin, I just mentioned, because Mark is asking me how I deal with my mental health and stuff like that. So I go to Yasmin, I go to Sania, I basically do meditation. So that's what I do myself.
Thank you to both of you.
Rachel is a consultant psychiatrist. What about you?
Hi. Yes, similar to Patrick, we have peer supervision here, which is sometimes formal, but more often I think the healthier form is the less formal one, where we get together and share our experiences. Of course, on our side, you know, we're often listening to very difficult stories, and this is very important to us as well, to take care of our own mental health.
And Desiree?
I was running for many years a success group meeting for women, where we shared ideas, ambitions, fears. And that for me was, I think, one of the times where I took best care of it. This was also where I was most busy in my business. And just the exchange with others, to see how they struggle, to see how they succeed. We always came out with a big boost of self-esteem, of even if I shared a failure, that common gratitude, that common joint together always made me come out with lessons learned, instead of me beating myself over the head and letting my self-esteem pull me down. Another thing that I use a lot is self-visualization. So I visualize in advance what will happen, how I want it to happen, to prepare myself to come with confidence, to come with the expectation that things will go well, that I will connect well to the people, that I will fit into the surrounding, that together we will create success in whatever we're about to do. And that preparation for my mind actually kind of pushes away the self-limiting beliefs and helps me to proactively prepare before big or difficult situations. I found that a very helpful tool for me as well.
Thank you very much, Desiree, for that, and welcome, Yasmin. Apologies for the technical issue with you joining. So you run Sania, a place, Russell mentioned herself, a place to help sort of people deal with not only their mental wellness issues, but other wellness issues. What do you do yourself?
First of all, thank you. I think the thing that helps me the most really is meditation. I've been meditating consistently for many, many years. And I find that that is really kind of an anchor to come back always to myself. Something that I've added recently is the sensory deprivation tank, because I have suffered from burnout in the past, and my nervous system is something I feel like I have to constantly look after, especially obviously running Shireburn and also Sanya. My days are very busy. So when I feel a bit overstimulated or getting close to burnout, I just go and lie and lock myself in the tank for an hour. I think you're muted, Mark.
That sounds very tempting. I was saying that maybe we should plan a visit to Sanya ourselves and try it out. Thanks for that. I have another question which I'd like you to answer, all of you, but let's move on to the individual questions. And if we have time, we'll come back to it. Alessandra, assertiveness works both ways, of course. It could be generally perceived that people may have issues with asserting themselves with their managers. But what about the other way around? How can managers be more assertive with their teams?
So thank you for the question, Mark. Well, there are many ways, in my opinion, in which they could do that. So first of all, I think that they should go through an assertiveness trainings, but to be more precise, to promote transparency and open communication as the team culture, as an organization culture. For example, what could happen that a manager might not be so assertive with the employees because maybe having pressure from higher authorities, other people who are pressuring, and then therefore having a non-assertive communication because of an end goal. So I do think that sometimes even not trying to please everybody at work, even our own, the higher authorities, so to speak, and try to reach a common goal as a team would make managers' assertiveness better, and that would reflect on their teams. For sure, some upskilling training would always help. I always like to promote non-violent communication trainings for leaders because it's just such a great tool. It just goes so much hand in hand with assertive communication. So to be able to have compassionate conversations, which helps also with feedback. So assertive feedback is also something that not everyone does. So I believe that would be a great way that managers could train to promote that with their employees.
Thanks a lot, Alessandra. I'll move on to Stefania. Sure. So mental illness is another form of physical illness, but of course there is quite a stigma associated with it compared to other diseases. So what can be done to address the stigma that still exists towards people with mental health issues?
If we're going to focus on the workplace, I will refer back to something which I mentioned earlier. I mean, Alessandra mentioned how important it is for people to be assertive, but does the environment support us in being assertive and talking about our mental health issues and keeping our boundaries? So as employees, we need to open up this discussion ourselves. We need to create an environment where people with mental health issues are not stigmatized, but are respected, are given the space to discuss their issues, but I must say are also expected to also act as responsible employees. I think that is something which is very important, the balance and the equality. Because if a person with a mental health issue is still expected to make his contribution or her contribution, the other employees will be less, maybe harbor less negative emotions towards him or her. So we need to put our cards on the table, create an environment where this can happen, support where necessary, but still demand the contribution according to the person's situation at any one time, so that things are fair, respectful, and we can all move forward together.
Thank you very much, Stefania. And on the issue of illness, I'm going to turn to Rachel. Can a lack of self-esteem be the underlying cause of serious medical conditions if it's left, untreated or unaddressed?
Yes, I think is the short answer. So although we know, self-esteem is not, having low self-esteem in itself is not a mental disorder. It's not a categorized mental disorder. However, there are clear links between how the way we feel and our emotional well-being. So yes, low self-esteem is linked with a poor quality or poor mental health, and usually it's in three ways, mainly through poor relationships. So it affects the relationships we have with others, and of course that can have a very significant effect on our mental well-being. We need to talk about addictions as well here, because low self-esteem is closely linked to the development of alcohol use disorders and even drug use disorders. And I think people at the workplace need to be well versed in this area to be able to pick up people who are suffering from harmful use of substances. And of course, depression and anxiety, common mental disorders, which also have a foundation in low self-esteem. I mean, the treatment of these disorders in terms of therapy is very much around the way, understanding that the way we think affects the way we feel and the way we behave. I mean, this is the bottom line for the evidence-based treatments in depression and anxiety, cognitive behavioral therapy. And this is what we're talking about, right? This is our self-esteem. So, yes.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for that. I'm going to I'm moving on quickly because I'm very conscious that we only have about 17-18 minutes left, and I want to go through all the questions, and we have a number of questions that have come in from the audience. So Desiree, I'm going to turn to you now. You have a background in addressing cultural differences and how they impact workplaces, etc. Of course, this is a globalized world, and all workplaces are experiencing influx of different cultures. I personally think it's a wonderful thing that this is happening, but of course it can also create tension. So how do cultural differences in the workplace affect the way people communicate with each other, and how can we support better communication between people with different backgrounds?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. Now, not only where you live, but now especially also when we work online, a lot of the body language is missing, but we still communicate interculturally. And there's so many different things that affect how we perceive the other person, and with that, how much we feel connected or threatened by the other person, which has a direct effect on how we communicate, of how safe we feel, how confident we are. So obviously, one very, very important thing is to raise awareness about the differences in cultural communication, so that if somebody has a strong eye contact and I come from a country where you don't have eye contact, that I can identify that this is not an aggression, but that this is a cultural difference. Or when how people speak very directly to what they think, what they want to say, while others talk more around it and don't really quite get to the point. To have compassion for the differences is important, but you need to understand, you need to learn it. It has to do with awareness. We need the self-awareness about how we behave in each situation with each different culture. What does it do to me? But also that I have an interest to learn, how do other people communicate from their cultural background? How will that influence our communication together? So I think intercultural training is a very important thing. Or if you're just starting to get interested, that you bring it up as a topic. You say, look, I recognize that how I communicate is different from you, and then bring it up as a topic and say, how do we both feel with that? Do we need to make an agreement of of how we want to interact with each other so that we do understand each other and this doesn't become a barrier or something that I leave the conversation and I'm, you know, I'm feeling worse than before or not capable or whatever, or make the other person feel incapable, which is also not what we want to do.
Thank you, Desiree. I always tend to believe that also to tie it even to the topic, lack of self-esteem sometimes can also instigate fears of the unknown and also explain a lot of this antagonism or tension that we see when people are faced with with people from different backgrounds. I'm going to move on to Patrick and then close with Rosalind with a legal question. But Patrick, you do a lot of work with companies focusing on mental wellness. What can management do to promote self-esteem and assertiveness in a company's workforce?
Yeah, the answer is easy, but the implementation isn't that easy. So I believe basically if the leadership creates these very three important ingredients in their culture, where people feel that they are valued, so that they are given the message that their contributions matter, that they are of added value for the company and they are important for the company, their skills, their knowledge are assets. Secondly, that they are respected, so that in every way, in every action, decision, even the simplest email, there is underlying respect. And finally, that they are cared for. Number three, that they feel that the company genuinely cares for them and that there's psychological safety, that if a mistake is done, it's not the end of the world, you know, that they can be vulnerable, they can bring their true, authentic selves to the workplace, and that their well-being is also guarded in terms of workload, the nature of the work, the support they're given. Because the tendency now and the temptation is that post-pandemic, we all squeeze and tighten to get you know, to recover even financially. And we can easily make the mistake of really stressing out our employees even more than they have already been stressed out. So I think if we have those three ingredients, we should be fine. But as I said, sometimes it can be very challenging.
And tying to what you're saying, we actually have an interesting comment from one of our participants, Roseanne, who is an HR manager, and she says that she finds it a major struggle to find a balance between being compassionate and being assertive.
Yeah.
And this also ties into what you were talking with Alessandra about, you know, managing downwards as well, not just upwards. When being compassionate, some may perceive you as a pushover, Roseanne says, only to be quite surprised then when, you know, she has to put her foot down on certain occasions. Thank you for that comment. Thank you for that comment, Roseanne. I'm going to move on to Rosalind. Rosalind, it's difficult maybe to automatically link legal repercussions with assertiveness, but when you are being abused at work or bullied at work, and there are a number of remedies available legally and otherwise, but doesn't it take a certain amount of assertiveness to speak up and try to pursue those remedies? And I'm going to tie a second question with this so that maybe you can answer in one go. What legal liabilities could there be if a person at work doesn't speak up about some issues that they are seeing because of a lack of assertiveness? So can a lack of assertiveness actually cause legal problems?
Okay, I need a whole session for this, but in summary, first of all, I would like to say that unfortunately,
you still have to be quick though, Rose.
I'm going to be very quick. Unfortunately, the law doesn't cater for bullying; it just caters for harassment. So, in fact, most of the time, we put bullying claims under harassment, and that's something which I think you know, government should look at and introduce legislation dealing with bullying. But to answer your question very quickly, companies need to provide a safe space. In fact, even Stefania mentioned, for example, having a policy, because why? It's the policy that will indicate how such issues may be addressed. Normally go for an informal procedure as a first step. If the informal procedure doesn't work, we can go for a formal procedure. But what is very important is I think that companies also give the tools to employees, because we talk a lot about cases where people have mental health issues. we need to also look at prevention. So that's what I tell my clients, you need to also show. Now, you should do it because it should be your culture and you should want to do it. But legally, it helps as well, because when it comes to mitigating your liabilities, you can show that you've trained your employees, you can show that you have a policy in place, you can show that you've given them the tools. For example, created a meditation workshop. In fact, I was telling Yasmin last time, I think we need to do more corporate events where people are given the tools to look after their own mental health. But yes, there could be liabilities, and yes, it is very hard for employees to actually speak up. So the company has to create that good environment, which is also what Patrick was saying, where you value employees, where you show them that this is a safe space. And through that, you have more people speaking up. It's very important that we encourage people to speak up. And also, we need to make sure that people speak up, because sometimes what happens legally is people don't speak up, they resign, and then we are faced with what is called a constructive unfair dismissal claim, which means my position was made untenable, I couldn't do anything, and I had to basically dismiss myself. And that could be another claim for constructive unfair dismissal. I spoke very fast to say as much as possible because there was a lot to say. But just one final word for companies, my suggestion is give the tools and do not let situations get to the point of people having mental health issues. And if they do, handle with a lot of care. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Roseanne. It was quick but exhaustive, so thank you so much. Of course, if anyone has any follow-up questions for any of our panelists, we'll be happy to connect you with them or pass on your questions to them after this event. I have a question from Cynthia, asking probably Patrick or maybe Alessandra can answer this one, or even Desiree, anyone who thinks they can answer it, just do so. Who in the organization could be best suited to perform the role of mental health ambassadors other than the HR team? Of course, human resources professionals are not always trained properly necessarily to do this kind of thing. Alessandra, maybe you can
Sure.
can comment on this. Is it a role specific thing or is it a personality thing?
So for me, honestly, anybody should be a mental health first aider in the organization. I don't think there is somebody that would be more or less equipped. Ideally, of course, the typical thing is to start with the HR and the leaders because of the decision-making process. However, every employee should be given the opportunity to be a mental health ambassador, or more specifically, a mental health first aider, because you don't have to be necessarily an expert to have compassion and provide first aid. If you put on the same level the physical aid and the well-being first aid, so physical and mental should be always on the same level. They still are not, but hopefully we're going in that direction. So anybody can do a first aid for physical health. Why not for mental health? So that would be, yeah.
Which brings me to a question for Yasmin. This is chicken and egg type question. Does self-esteem have to precede self-care, or is it self-care which delivers self-esteem? I mean, you are a self-care professional. You help people look after themselves. What do you find? Do people need to be okay to come to you, or do they become okay? Which comes first, self-care or self-esteem?
To be honest, I spent a lot of time thinking about this question this week when you first sent it to me, because my first thought was chicken and egg, sort of we can't separate them. But then actually, the more I started thinking about it, the more I realized that actually they are two concepts which stand alone and can be very independent of each other. Sometimes we actually care for ourselves out of a place of low self-esteem because we're overly protective, we're sort of stuck in our comfort zone, and sometimes that can actually look like self-care, funnily enough. So I think they're two separate things. Going back to something that Alessandra said in her presentation about sort of self-care and being the self-esteem being the immune system, I think it was. Self-care is kind of like the nervous system, right, of our consciousness. And I feel like the more we care for ourselves, the more we're giving a basis, not just for good self-esteem, but for many other things in our life. If we're burnt out, there is very little that we can do well, whether it's in the workplace or within our relationships. So I think it stands alone. Self-esteem obviously is connected to self-care, but it's a standalone concept that I think is more related to our ability to actualize ourselves in our life rather than something that is sort of dependent on caring for ourselves.
A follow-up question for you, Yasmin. You're also the CEO of Shirebank. So is there such a thing as corporate self-esteem? I mean, does the company that one works with contribute to a person's self-esteem? And does the public perception of a company impact on individual self-esteem? So if you work for a company that has been in the news for bad reasons, how does that impact your self-esteem? And what can companies do to look after their reputation and encourage corporate self-esteem if it is a thing?
I think we all know that our companies impact our self-esteem, right? It's something that we experience on a day-to-day basis, and the environment which we work in contributes very much to our mental health in all aspects. Going back to some points that were raised earlier, I definitely believe that it's very important for the management of a company to care about mental health. I don't think mental health can be something that an HR executive can do alone, or a mental health first aider can do alone. It very much comes from the top. And unfortunately, the sad thing is that in the corporate world, we sort of have a kind of lower standard to what we tolerate. In fact, for me, it was very interesting kind of stepping deeper into the corporate world recently, because I've always run my own business where it's very easy for me to set a culture and hire accordingly and fire accordingly. And you sort of in the health and wellness world hear this thing, sort of the corporate world, it's so, you know, inhumane and it's not fun and it's toxic and so on. But the reality is that we are the corporate world. And it's up to us to hold the corporate world to a higher standard and actually believe that the corporate world doesn't have to be toxic. But it does depend on us taking long-term approach to this, because sometimes you do have to maybe not fire, but sort of who you promote, who you hire, who you fire. These affect your bottom line, right? So if you have a toxic employee who is very productive, you know, most managers might say, I'm going to turn a blind eye to the fact that he's, you know, not a very nice manager because it affects my bottom line. And it's up to us as leaders to say, long term, it's harming our bottom line. And I think we have to have the courage to realize this. And I think something sort of that the health community needs to do is actually empower leaders to experience this for themselves, because we need to live it and know it, to be able to create an environment that is supportive to this. And what I can say, sorry, just one last sentence, is that
go ahead.
my experience coming here to work at Shirebank, I mean, I was very lucky to find a nice culture, but it's so much easier to bring in sort of all of the things that Alessandra was talking about than we believe it is. So I think if we believe in it and if we own it, I think it's a lot easier than we can sometimes fear it to be.
I think what you're saying is really important, and it also ties to you know, to the issue. For example, Sean here is mentioning in the comments how he has experienced difficulties convincing his employers to take these issues seriously. So I think the fact that you're on a leading role in an organization, you know, and intrinsically believe these things will help, because I think the message, maybe to partially answer Sean's question, is what can we do to convince management to give mental health issues more importance at work is, one, it's the right thing to do, so they should do it, irrespective. That's what I think should be the motivation. But secondly, as you said, it affects the bottom line in the long run positively. If you look after mental health of your employees, negatively if you don't. I'm afraid we've really reached 4:15, and I'm really keen on making sure that we end the webinar on time. So I really want to thank our speakers and panelists. I'm sorry we didn't have more time. There were many more questions, as you know, that I wanted to ask you, and some even from the audience. I will follow up with these questions with the panelists and send answers to everyone online. I just want to close by saying that in December, we are going to organize a conference on mental health at work. www.mentalwellnessconference.eu. All of the panelists you saw today will be there, either in person or virtually. It will be a hybrid conference. I really encourage you to find the time to look at our website. I was going to take you through it briefly myself, but there is no time, and I would not like to keep you on longer than we promised you. So without much further ado, I'll thank our sponsors again, and thank you for attending, and also wish you a great evening, and we hope to see you on the 15th of December. We have some great speakers besides the one we've seen today. And if you go to the website, you can see who they are, and hopefully this will encourage you to attend. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
And for those of you who enjoyed the song before, we'll play it again as we leave the meeting.
I hate all this bombing. When is their love coming? On waves of flowers and songs of repentance. Or maybe we'll kill them, or maybe they'll kill us. And one thing's for certain, it might take forever. I know just how it feels to be on the verge of destruction. I know, just wanna reach out and touch someone. Reach out and touch someone. So tell me, my darling, so where does it hurt you? In places of interest, all songs of religion, they hide behind mountains. These people of no faith, they sing about heaven and go straight to hell. I know just how it feels to be on the verge of destruction. I know, just wanna reach out and touch someone. 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 My supper, I wish for a daughter. By dropping a few bombs, they're stopping the slaughter. So kill me with pleasure and drown me in laughter, and make me a martyr of love and devotion. I know just how it feels on the verge of destruction. I know just how it feels to ride on the waves of emotion. I know, just wanna reach out and touch someone. Reach out and touch someone.